topic is supposed to be the Ramakrishna movement, its early days and inception. The real inception, if you want to go back to the very beginning, is, of course, with Sri Ramakrishna himself. Sri Ramakrishna drew a picture on the wall of his room in which he showed figures, and someone asked him what that meant, and the idea was it showed a picture. Sri Ramakrishna's idea that Swami Vedananda would teach humanity, and that this incarnation, he said, his presence in this world was all for him, meaning for Swamiji, Swami Vedananda, to do his work. And Sri Ramakrishna had gone, he described he had gone to a very high spiritual realm and found there 7 sages in meditation. And he went to the one who was interpreted to be the leader of these 7 sages and told him, I am going down to the earth, you must come also. And that sage, absorbed in meditation, expressed his agreement to come, not by words, but by a very gracious look. So you could say the Ramakrishna mission was founded in that moment when Sri Ramakrishna went to this Saptarshi Loka. But as far as the actual beginnings, you could say that it was Swami Vivekananda's trip throughout India, because he found that India was full of spirituality, full of religion, but also subject to intense poverty, intense physical misery. And his heart was moved by that. And the climax of it, again, came at the end of his pilgrimage throughout India. He reached the southernmost point of India, Kanyakumari. And there he swam across some 400 yards of very turbulent waters. If any of you have ever been to Kanyakumari, you'll know the 3 oceans meet at that point, the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, and the Bay of Bengal. They meet at that point, and it's a very rough and stormy area. But Swamiji swam across, and if you stand there now and look at that island, you wonder how he could manage to reach it by swimming. But he did, and on that island, there is a temple to the Divine Mother. So the Divine Mother is at the back of all of this movement, because on that island, sitting on that rock, seeing himself as slightly removed from India in this island, the whole of India in front of him, he deeply thought what needed to be done. And he found there was an intense need for helping, supporting, and promoting the welfare of people, not so much in the spiritual sense, because India was so rich in spirituality, but in a physical and practical sense. So you could say that the Ramakrishna movement also was born out of Swamiji's meditation at Kanyakumari. He said to himself, these monks of Sri Ramakrishna that had been created by Sri Ramakrishna wandering all over India. He said there was a necessity, there was so much, there was spirituality enough, but there needed to be physical help, there needed to be help in famines and help in distress. So he said a group of sannyasins in a disinterested way, taking a magic lantern, which is what he called slide projectors, going to the villages and showing the people what the modern world looked like and what was necessary to thrive under these new conditions. So this was the start of the order, really, in that sense. But there were other things. There were other things that happened. For one thing, disciples, as he had traveled through India, the word had gone out that there was going to be a parliament of religions in Chicago, in America, which was half a world away, literally half a world away. There are 12 hours of time difference out of a total of 24 hours, so literally on the other side of the world. And the representatives of all religions were being invited to speak. Swamiji had made such a tremendous impression on his trip through India that he was being urged to go to Chicago, but he was very doubtful. Then there were two things that happened. One was he had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna backing away into the water on the shore of a body of water. He saw Sri Ramakrishna backing off into the water and bidding him to follow him. Of course, at that same time, his disciples had been urging him to go to Chicago, saying that they would raise money for his trip. In fact, they did raise money by begging. They raised money for a trip to Chicago, which was quite a bit of money in those days, and still is probably. Anyway, he told them to give that money away, give that money to the poor, and if it was God's will that he should come to the West and do appear at this Parliament of Religions, that money would come back. So, but then he had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna backing off into a vast body of water, an ocean water, and bidding him to follow. So he began to be now quite convinced that this is something he should do, but he was still not fully convinced. He decided to write to the Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi, in Bengal. And he was then at that point, he was in Chennai and Madras. And he wrote to her, asking her opinion on whether he should go to the West. And Mother received that letter, and she said, no, why should my son go to the West? Such a long trip, such a dangerous journey, how much trouble, how much difficulty he would face. No, certainly he should not go to the West. But that night, she had a vision in which she saw the temple garden at Dakshineshwar. She saw the Ganga, she saw the steps leading down to the Ganga from the Dakshineshwar temple, and she saw many people there taking bath in the water. And as she was watching it, she saw Sri Ramakrishna come down. This was all in a vision, of course. Sri Ramakrishna had passed away long before, physically passed away, but in a vision she saw Sri Ramakrishna run down the steps from the Chandni there at the Dakshineshwar temple, rush down into the water, and his form melted into the water. That was what she saw in her vision. She was astounded at this, but then she became even more astounded because she saw Swamiji come down those same steps, all in her vision. Come down those same steps, get into the water, and take handsful of that water into which Sri Ramakrishna had dissolved himself. Take handful of that water and spray it over. By now there was hundreds of people were there. This is all in her vision, of course. She saw that hundreds of people had gathered and Swamiji was spraying this water where Sri Ramakrishna had dissolved, spraying that water upon all these people who had gathered there for bathing at the Ganga, at the Ghat. Then she became convinced, no, it was necessary for Swami Vedananda to go to the West. This was part of a divine plan. It was part of something that had been ordained. So she wrote back to Swamiji, who was in South India at the time, yes, my son, go and do this. So this is the, you could say, the divine impetus behind the Ramakrishna mission. We're celebrating the 125th anniversary of that, of the founding of that mission. And of course there were many other things that happened. The story could be lengthened, but I wanted to emphasize that divine foundation, you could say, that is behind all of this. So that when Swami Vedananda was shown, he came back, tens of thousands of people welcomed him. And in his, then he realized one thing, though, the West has definitely contributed to this, and that is the spirit of organization. Swamiji said he had fallen in love with organization. That things, even very difficult, almost impossible things, can be subject to organization, can be made practical, can be made real and realistic through organization. This, he said, I've fallen in love with organization. The idea that that was a means by which these seemingly impossible things could be easily accomplished. That was the beginning of the Ramakrishna Math and the Ramakrishna mission. And of course the story is very long, and many different aspects took place. But just as a brief introduction, this is the a way of remembering on this 125th anniversary of the founding the glorious spiritual heritage of our organization.